to send a shout out to Rick Dusty. Thank you for being our technology lead. For over 50 years, the UUFP has been a liberal religious voice in the Pottstown area. Now, I was looking a little bit at the term liberal religion, and the definition that I liked was the one that Britannica, History Encyclopedia Britannica, they dropped encyclopedia when everything went online. So Britannica website had a definition. They said, theological liberalism is a form of religious thought that establishes religious inquiry on the basis of norms other than the authority or tradition. UU musician Jason Shelton expresses this as, we dare to question, we choose to believe, in the lyrics of one of the songs. As UUs, we believe that it's okay if we don't have all the answers. The world is a big place. There are lots of questions to explore. But the important thing is that we keep an open mind and we support one another while we search. But you know, the most important thing of all, that we believe our circle of justice and compassion is big enough for everyone, no matter what questions they bring. So we hope that your spirit and your heart and your mind are refreshed this morning as we explore the principle of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. We come together on Sunday mornings, not because we share a creed, but because we share a promise. We promise to support one another on our spiritual journeys. Our services are really different each week, but the loving kindness we find in this community is the same. So whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you are in space and time right now, whoever you love, we are so glad that you are here with us today. And now we have a moment for an announcement. If anyone has an announcement, please come on forward and use one of the microphones.
It's your civil's birthday today.
You hear that? Singing. If you can't hear it, it doesn't make a sense for us to say.
Yeah, and God is a freak.
She spoke a little bit, but she'll be back up. But if you can't hear her, then we should just get into, we'll just away and we'll what you want.
They're an organization that distributes medical kits to war-torn and impoverished communities around the world. And they collect these little knitted or crocheted garments, put them in medical kits and packing materials instead of styrofoam. And then the service people and the physicians hand these out to the children, some of whom never have to. So if you're a knitter or a crocheter or want to be, and you want to do knitting or crocheting purpose, this could be it. And we also meet, if anybody wants to, on the third Sunday after potluck for knitting instruction. Thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone. Now's the time for the chalice lighting. Chloe, did you want to light, please? So we'll light our chalice this morning with the words from Steve Stock. We light this chalice to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We reaffirm the historic pledge of liberal religion to seek that justice which transcends mere legality and moves towards the resolution of true equality, and to share that love which is ultimately beyond even our cherished reason, that love which unites all of us. So now is the public service announcement. So that technology which unites us all and brings us closer to our Facebook friends and helps us to stay current with the news, when we're all together in one place, that technology can distract us from what's going on right here in this room. So if anyone would like to take the time to put their phone into worship mode so that we can stay here connected with one another, this would be the time to do it. And I actually remembered to do it before the service this morning, so I'm firing at all syllables. Except that I just said syllables instead of cylinders. That would tell you something. Right, so. Now everyone can take a nice deep breath. Settle your feet firmly onto the floor. Settle your body firmly into your chair. And hear the soft breathing of the people around you, a little rustling, a little movement that mean that you're not alone. You can hear the air flowing through the room. You can hear soft shuffling of feet. Maybe you can even feel the beat of your own heart. Take one more deep breath. It's amazing how long one tiny little movement can last. For opening words this morning, we have words from Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the peculiars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone, our vision might be too narrow to be all that must be seen, our strength too limited to do all that must be done. But together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. So speaking of strength, let's join in singing Hail the Golden Glorious City. And you may be thinking, oh no, she picked another one nobody knows. But as Miss Lisa said, all of the tunes in the book are named, and this tune is Hyperdal, which everybody might be familiar with as Blue Lord Home. So it's number 140. it's time for a story. So whether you are young in body or spirit, I'd like to invite you to come on up to the front and join Miss Megan and listen to a story. Today's story is called Kindness Grows. It all starts with a crack that we can hardly see. It happens when we shout or if we disagree. But with every kindness that we care to show, something good and magical will begin to grow. Friendships can be damaged by mean or ugly word. Once it has been spoken, it cannot be unheard. Words of encouragement, sweetness, warmth, and care blossom, grow, and flourish as they spread love everywhere. If we leave friends abandoned, sad, or on their own, soon the crack will widen and we'll be left alone. Sharing things with others, making a new friend, we'll begin a journey we hope will never end. It's so hard to be friendly when all we feel is sad. Sometimes we are thoughtless and we make others feel bad. But a timely proper action can make somebody's day. If we keep our friends close by, we won't drive them away. When we argue with each other or we refuse to share, the crack grows even wider, but we don't know that it's there. Playing all together is always much more fun. We have a lot of space here for each and every one. Sometimes we are selfish, we shout and stomp our feet, feeling annoyed and angry with everyone we meet. But when we work together, just look at what we can do. Anything is possible when 1 + 1 makes 2. Anger can consume us until we just can't see the beauty that's around us, the moon, the stars, a tree. If we lean on one another and keep our friends around, we make each other happy, warm, safe, and sound. The crack that has grown so wide now, can we ever make things right? If we reach out to others, then maybe we just might. It only takes a gesture, a smile can be the start to spread the seed of friendship and touch somebody's heart. Reaching out to others is not as difficult as it seems. If we all join together, we can chase our dreams. Our tree will grow much stronger the more we show we care, built from love and kindness and the friendship that we share. This is the time in our service where we pause for our morning offering. Our Christmas reminds us, Unitarian Universalist is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous small and mid-sized congregations, many small congregations. But no matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members. Each one of you, in your commitment of time and energy and resources, helps make that vision real. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building a world filled with peace, justice, love, and joy. Now sing with number 37, God Who Fills the Universe. And now we have a reading, and this is coming from a book that's actually called A Comedian and an Activist Walk into a Bar, but it's actually a book that was written for a class a class about communication and social justice. So this is just an example of a way that comedy adds to social justice. He said, outside the US, a nonprofit advocacy organization based in Norway, SAIH Norway, which stands for the Norwegian Students and Academics International Assistance Fund, created an ongoing online media campaign called Ratty Aid. The campaign aims to humorously critique media narratives of Africa and the developing world, which, according to SAIH Norway, often present an image which is lacking in nuance and focuses exclusively upon war, poverty, and conflict. And if anyone has seen any of those Save the Children's ads, you know what we're talking about. So one example of Ratty Aid's work, a short-form parody public service announcement posted on YouTube titled Let's Save Africa, presents an aid organization filming a commercial plea for help. The parody PSA, which garnered more than 1.5 million views on YouTube, stars a young African boy, Michael, who reveals himself to be a local actor, cleverly leveraging the steady stream of such filming in his community, given that he matches the image of the sad African. Now, when the aid representative begins to cry as she reveals the litany of sadness in the area, he places his hand gently on hers and says, "Is this your first charity appeal?" The end of the video implores the audience to donate your stereotypes at rustyradiator.com. And then they say viewers can watch comedy videos that critique narrative approaches that may inadvertently apply a lack of agency and encourage a new way of telling stories that empower developing countries. By challenging the global North white savior narrative, the comedic treatment not only can attract attention, but also can encourage audiences to accurately consider global South residents as active participants in their communities, rather than passive victims awaiting charity. So that is what that was about. Now we have another hymn, because it's a music Sunday for another Sunday in a row, but this is one of my favorites. It's Though I May Speak with Greatest Fire. It's hymn number 34. And anyone who knows parts, feel free to sing in parts. So what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Does anybody remember the show All in the Family? I'm gonna have to tell you, I never liked All in the Family. It was a sitcom that ran from like 71 to 79, and it ran much longer than that in reruns, where it was broadcast after the evening news, but before Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. It was created by Norman Lear, who went on to produce many other hit sitcoms. And it has been decorated with numerous awards, Directors Guild of America, Golden Globe, Primetime Emmys, Humanitas Prize, among others. It was a groundbreaking show about a white working class family living in Queens, and the way that that family, especially the patriarch Archie Bunker, was dealing with the social changes of the time. So the main characters were like Archie and his wife, and then their daughter and their daughter's much more liberal husband who lived with them. Now, the show was so controversial at the time that it aired, that before it aired, they had to put on a disclaimer that said, "The program you are about to see is All in the Family. It seeks to throw a humorous spotlight on our frailties, prejudices, and concerns by making them a source of laughter. We hope to show in a mature fashion just how absurd they are." Can you imagine somebody putting that on the show today? Like, we assume, okay, yeah, that's gotta be humor. Now, even though this was objectively an amazing show, I remember cringing every time Edith Bunker started playing the piano and singing "Those Were the Days." And I was afraid of Archie Bunker as a child because he didn't seem to like people like me. And he and his family argued a lot about a lot of things. Now, I'm a person who is not terribly good with names and faces, but I know the names of Archie and Edith Bunker. Just like I remember Mr. and Mrs. Caparuso, who lived on this side of me, and Mr. and Mrs. Rizzo, who lived on this side of me. Although I don't know their first names because I was raised in the 70s when adults didn't have first names. Now, I was happy to watch MASH, another hit TV show. Even though it was technically a show about war, I really liked Hawkeye and Houlihan and Radar and Klinger and all those people who are out there trying to save lives in a difficult situation and trying to use humor to keep their spirits up. And I may be canceled for this, but Klinger was the first person I was aware of who wore traditionally female clothes with a male body. And as a kid, I didn't know why his clothes would get him kicked out of the military. I was like, what? On the other hand, I did always wonder how he got such amazing clothes. Now, when I grew up, there were only a couple of channels that you could watch. You could watch ABC, you could watch CBS, you could watch NBC, you could watch Fox. And then there was also like PBS, which wherever was channel 17. And I used to be able to watch like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. But the cast of Cheers, the Huxtables from the Cosby Show, the Keatons from Family Ties, all of them were people that I knew growing up. Those were faces and family and friends whose lives showed me what normal looked like outside of my little suburb of Buffalo, New York. And that's one thing that television does for us. It shows us glimpses of other people's lives and other people's version of normal. I mean, it doesn't happen as much today because we don't have as cohesive a television landscape as we did when I was growing up. But we still do have some families in common, like probably a lot of people are familiar with Jay Pritchett and his kids Gloria and Mitchell from Modern Family. And as I was writing this, I was distracted by the Johnson family from Blackish because they were trying to find diversity in American Girl dolls. Good luck. In 2012, then Vice President Biden said on Meet the Press, as quoted in an article on Variety.com, that he was comfortable with marriage equality. And the reason he spoke up in marriage equality, while President Obama's stance was still evolving, was comedy. He said, when things really began to change for me is when social culture changes. So I think Will and Grace probably did more to educate the American public than almost anything anybody's done so far. And when the Smithsonian added LGBT history to the National Museum of American History, the AP reported that the curator, who was Dwight Walker Bowers, he said, Will and Grace used comedy to familiarize a mainstream audience with gay culture. And it was daring and it broke ground kind of the same way that All in the Family did in the 1970s around issues of bigotry and tolerance. My children don't remember a world without marriage equality. And that's in part because of Will and Grace. Will and Grace ran from like 1998 to around 2006. And the first run of that series, because I know it came back, but the reboot doesn't count. But in the first run of the series around 2006, the main characters were all in stable relationships with children. That same AP article, the show creator, David Cohen, said, these people were guests who were invited into the public's living rooms, and they happened to be gay. And he said, I don't think people really had the opportunity to have that before. And it served to make people recognize that you could have close friends, close neighbors who were gay. And this is sounding like all we have to do to promote equity in any form in our country is just turn on our favorite media and enjoy. Woohoo! Yeah. But Katie Borum-Chatu and Lauren Feldman argue in their book, A Comedian and an Activist Walk into a Bar, The Serious Role of Comedy with Social Justice. They argue that at the individual level, comedy has 4 primary effects that are important in the context of social change. First, they increase the message and issue attention. Next, they disarm audiences and lower resistance to persuasion. And then they break down barriers and they stimulate sharing and discussion. So, okay, I guess All in the Family and Will and Grace were talking about using humor to break down social barriers because they introduced us to people that we might not otherwise encounter in daily life. But what about those other points? Well, humor lowers resistance to persuasion. Scott Edwards, writing for Harvard Medical School, wrote that laughter is a social signal amongst mammals. So chimpanzees and orangutans, if you've ever seen those like adorable videos of somebody tickling a baby chimpanzee and it goes. I mean, seriously, my cat watched that video and thought it was cool. But laughter is a social signal that means everything is okay. And Edward distinguishes laughter from humor. So he's saying laughter is that social signal that means everything is okay. But humor is the prefrontal cortex processing, storytelling, and then creating an aha moment where we get the joke. And then when we get the joke, that release of, oh my gosh, I understand, that means that we laugh because everything's okay. Oh, I get it, it's okay. Chetu and Feldman write that humor requires a visual or linguistics cue that shifts us into a playful rather than serious state of mind, at least momentarily. And in that playful state, we're able to enjoy humor as opposed to being irritated or threatened or offended by it. The theory is that it's difficult to use those same mental channels that begin to rebut an argument when you're already using them to process the humor. So if somebody's saying something that you kind of disagree with, normally you'd be creating arguments in your head, but instead of creating arguments in your head, you're trying to figure out why it's funny. Then some of that logic will like disrupt your original thought process of rebutting. Mary O'Hara, a features correspondent for BBC, wrote in her 2016 article, How Comedy Makes Us Better People. She writes a quote from Scott Weems. Scott says, my first thought when I think about humor is it's a great way for us to have evolved so we don't have to hit each other with sticks. He's a cognitive neuroscience and author, and obviously he's also a humorist. In his recent book, Ha, The Science of When We Laugh and Why, Weems reviews a raft of academic studies, including those that use scanning to show which parts of the brain respond when we encounter something funny. In his book, he posits a theory, essentially, that humor is a form of psychological processing, a coping mechanism that helps people deal with complex and contradictory messages, like a response to conflict and confusion in our brain. We have a lot of brain channels that deal with cognitive dissonance, and he's saying that humor is one of them. Okay, so humor can lower our resistance by helping us deal with cognitive dissonance, but then humor raising awareness. Okay, when you don't know anyone who's affected by an issue of inequality, that problem is invisible. It might be out there, it's definitely out there, but it's less real than it would be if it's affected your own friends and your own neighbors. Comedy can be used to introduce you to the people who are affected by that issue and raise your awareness and make the inequity visible. So as an example, last week tonight with John Oliver. So I actually have a different one in here, but last week tonight with John Oliver, one of the things he covered probably like 10, maybe 5 years ago was homelessness in Utah. And he covered it because people were, the way that Utah decided to deal with homelessness was housing first, which sounds like, oh, you're just giving people a handout. That's like the reaction that people have immediately. When you say housing first, give them the house and then help them with all the things that made them homeless in the first place. And John Oliver brought that up and he like made it funny, and he was like talking about how he was interviewing somebody and taking the antagonist point of view because that's what he does sometimes. And what that did was that made people see, oh my gosh, Utah is doing something that works. And it helped us to all see, hey, these are real people. They're really affected by it. They're not just like stick figures. They're not just numbers on a page or a pie graph. They're actual people who are actually being affected. And this way of helping them is something that actually does what it's supposed to do. And, you know, John Oliver also makes that funny, whereas me just talking about it, nobody laughs. Okay, so the one that I picked out for writing in here was actually, when Stephen Colbert, in his mock news show, The Colbert Report, which I'm sure all of you remember, when he broke down and explained campaign financing so that we could understand it and appreciate it by making a super PAC of his own. You guys remember that? Yeah, so I heard somebody say no, but he made the super PAC and then he's like, yeah, donate to me. And I'm going to give this to my completely unrelated to me coworker, and he gives it to Jon Stewart. And of course, you know, they are good friends. But we're not gonna coordinate anything. So, last week tonight has taken a more specific approach to deeper dives into systemic issues, which intend to illustrate both the wider socio-political context and the complex interconnectedness and embeddedness of public policies in social outcomes. That's what I've actually written. So another thing that John Oliver did was, he's able to give people really concrete things that they can do when he writes like his long essay about, like he's doing one on the FCC, and then he'll write his long, hilarious interview about it. And then he'll say, so if you think that the FCC should not cancel net neutrality, here is this one thing that you can do that is very easy. And after that net neutrality episode, the FCC was flooded with comments regarding that proposal to create priority lanes and do away with net neutrality, because it's one simple thing, and that brought so much awareness because everyone's out there watching him and being entertained. Chetu and Feldman write that political communications scholar Matthew Baum found that although people tune into late night comedy shows and other soft news shows primarily for the entertainment value, if they find serious issue content there, they pay attention. And it's not just an incidental byproduct of their entertainment consumption. The effects are strongest among those who are ordinarily not super attentive to the issue at hand. And the cognitive demands of paying attention would be the highest. So if you're somebody who's already paying attention to net neutrality and then you watch John Oliver, it's maybe you already talked to the FCC about it. But all those people out there who weren't paying attention, suddenly they're aware. And it makes comedy especially useful for reaching people who typically might not be aware. Okay, that was raising awareness. So next, stimulating, sharing, and discussion. So Chetu and Feldman write in their comedian and activist walk into the bar. They write, giving humor's inconsistent persuasive effects in the context of contemporary mediated comedy about social issues, outright persuasion might be a less feasible and potentially less important outcome than getting people to engage cognitively and emotionally with diverse ideas. So what they sound like they're saying there is, we can't always be persuaded by humor, because as funny as you find John Oliver or Colbert or All in the Family, you might not be out there like having the same views. So you can call attention to it all you want, but it might not change your mind. However, even if it doesn't change your mind, you might be sharing a clip of it with someone else. And that's where our current media landscape is really amazing for comedy affecting social justice. Because how many of you have memes, like have shared memes with somebody, like sent somebody a meme? I mean, in my teams at work, we have memes actually embedded in the structure so that you can, like, instead of responding to somebody with, I'm going to go do whatever thing that is, you can respond with like somebody from the office going. Memes are everywhere. And the fact that you can create little shareable clips, or the fact that like everything is out there on YouTube and you can send somebody, oh my gosh, this YouTube video was so funny, I think you should watch it. Maybe that's not somebody who would normally have seen it. Or maybe you're talking in an echo chamber like I would be. But it's amazing how humor makes it okay to share, because, you know, you might not be okay with sharing somebody, like, let's say you got a serious PSA about animal welfare. It might feel awkward to share that, but if you got like a PSA about animal welfare that was hilarious, you would totally share that. And maybe that would change somebody's mind. Mary O'Hara's BBC article quotes comedian Josie Long to say, satire is to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. Now, that's an adaptation of a quote from fictional 19th century bartender, Mr. Dooley. Mr. Dooley was created by humorist Finley Peter Dunn for the Chicago Evening Post back in 1893. And back then, he said it was the job of the newspaper to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. When was the last time anyone read a physical newspaper in this building? Oh, there's a couple. Wow. Well, David Shedden writes for Pointer.com and researched Dunn. He said that Dunn was famous for his critiques of then President Theodore Roosevelt. He found that Roosevelt appreciated Dunn's point of view and used it as a test of public opinion on his policies. And it's really interesting. Dunn actually wasn't like, he didn't know the president or anything, but at a certain point, President Roosevelt actually reached out to Dunn and was like, hey, I want to meet you because you're hilarious. I mean, that's the power that humor and social commentary can have. Now, we think sometimes that humor, because it's funny, can't be serious or have serious claims or do anything. And Sophie Quirk, who's a senior lecturer in drama and theater at the University of Kent, said that when comedy is linked to a serious subject, then we feel like, oh, it's okay to study comedy. But studying comedy, like studying joy, it's not something that we do generally unless it's linked to something like social justice. Oh, comedy is part of social justice, therefore we can study it. And I thought that was like an interesting point to bring up, because if I had just said, joy is great, how many of you would be like, yep, sure is, okay, what else are we doing this Sunday? But yeah, why don't we take comedy seriously? Comedy can move us, comedy can open our minds, comedy can allow us to appreciate the stories of others. And, you know, although comedy can expose us to different points of view, it doesn't always open us up to recognizing inequality. Like, we've all heard jokes that serve to reinforce stereotypes rather than challenge them. And we've all been exposed to jokes that we don't find funny, jokes that demean people or serve to keep the status quo, just as it's always been. But we have a job in that case. We have a job as media consumers to understand the difference, to look for the difference. Our job is to see something and say something, both about the comedy and the fact that sometimes comedy can make invisible people shine, and sometimes it can try to push invisible people back into the shadows. So there's an old story that I probably bring up at least every 2 months about the boy and the sea stars. Yeah, so the boy's out on the beach and throwing the sea stars back in the ocean after a huge storm, and somebody comes up to him and says, why bother? There are so many sea stars out here, and just throwing one back isn't making a difference. And the boy says, makes a difference to this one. Throws one back in the ocean. So I think about that every time I'm overwhelmed, and I don't believe that my little individual actions do anything at all. So if I'm shutting down one joke that's in poor taste, that's just throwing one sea star back into the ocean. But it makes a difference to everyone who is in that room. And if I'm just using humor to highlight one small issue, that makes a difference to anybody who heard about that issue and then took action. Just another sea star going into the ocean. And it doesn't even have to be me making up the humor. Sometimes supporting someone from, like supporting humor, watching humor, you know, people get paid for views. If you're watching somebody's humor from a community that needs help, you're actually lifting up that community. And that seems so passive, but it's actually something that's throwing a sea star back into the ocean for someone. And you know, you never know, that comic may be the next person who writes a family that becomes everyone's next door neighbor. So maybe we can all start throwing our sea stars back in together. May it be so. All right, so our next hymn is We Laugh, We Cry. This is a really long one, everyone, but I love it. So we're gonna all sing it together. 354 in your great home. And now is the time in our service where we share our joys and our sorrows.
If you please join in reading the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this chalice flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. And I'd like to close today's service with words by Eric Hewitt, which according to the UUA's worship web, is inspired by Reverend Elizabeth Wynn's chapter, Our Work for Social Justice, in the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide. To be a Unitarian Universalist means we'll never be done with the work. The work of telling truth about oppression, the work of resisting any laws or policies or practices that deny anyone their humanity. The work of stubbornly seeking out that spark of the divine in each other, no matter what. The work of creating a heaven here on earth. But to be a Unitarian Universalist also means we are not alone in the work. We're not alone because we promise to love one another. We're not alone because we are companions on the journey. We grow ourselves into allies, helping one another get free, because none of us is truly free until all of us are free. Amen. Shalom. Salah. Blessed be. And please join me in listening to the Ghost Key.
FDA said go, and then the rep would finally send us the paperwork, we could put it into the system, that's the one that started the whole thing. Well, you put one of the users would put people in and out. And she said, one day, it's here. Which I probably started laughing. And I said, okay, what do I do? She explained it, and he goes, I tried a shortcut, and she locked everybody out. If you look in the